One Step Ahead by Lundquist and Beslik.
Sasja, Beslik and James Osborne, welcome to this new session this year, which will bring you the best updates around the world in the world of sustainability, ESG, different kinds of trends that we believe people out there are keen to understand and listen to. James, how are you doing today?
Good. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year and Happy New Year to everybody. Yeah.
And welcome to our new listeners who are joining us on Spotify, because we've reorganized and rejigged our format. So we're happy to be speaking to and available and open to even more people who can listen to us when they want through their podcast, through their Spotify account. So very excited about that, and a big hello to everybody.
Big hello, and again, Happy New Year to all of you. Now the question is how this new year starts. There are a number of things happening around the world which we need to bring to attention, and one of them, of course, is related to the fires in California, more precisely around and in Los Angeles. I was listening, James, to an interview with Mel Gibson and some other celebrities about that, and people are, of course, devastated. There is amazing power that the fire has sort of taken down entire blocks of the city and destroyed houses in a speed that hasn't been seen before. Do you have any reflections on that? What do you think is sort of an underlying driver of this? Of course, climate change is one of them, but there are others, and they have been covered a bit in media, but the one that is more particularly related to water has not been covered. But, over to you in terms of what's your take on this?
No, it's obviously very, very saddening and very upsetting, and the speed and the voraciousness of the fire has been very incredible to everyone. And we're only in 1 degree warming, or last year it was 1.5 formally, but over the long term. So you think this is only just kind of the start of what's happening and how climate patterns are shifting. I was reading today about how there's what's called the climate whipsaw effect. So what we're getting is more and more switching from extremes. So you get extreme of wet weather and rain and precipitation going, and which means floods and other problems, going then from the other extreme to drought conditions. So you get, in terms of the forest cover and the vegetation, you get this sort of spurt of growth, and then you get it all dried out, which is very appropriate for forest fires. So kind of my question in the back of my mind is kind of how will those neighborhoods rebuild? Thinking about this is kind of going to be their future, because it's not going to go away. It's going to get worse rather than better. So how does the city rethink or adapt, or somehow kind of reconstruct in a way that's going to be safe? I mean, who's going to want to go back and build their homes again there, knowing that that's the way that their world's going to be going forward?
Yeah, I mean, that brings us to another topic, which is, of course, related to building or rebuilding the parts of the city, and rebuilding the California that has been devastated by these fires is also related to insurance costs. And this is something that I firmly believe is most likely directly related to climate change consequences, and also is going to have a profound impact on the financial community, global financial community, and could, in many ways, start or spark the next financial crisis. If we look at the numbers, which are quite staggering, the current estimate of the cost which is related to fires, it's about $25 billion. And the entire cost for the last year for insurance companies in relation to climate change was about 320 billion. So it is sort of a very interesting to see how this will develop going forward, and also who's going to pay for it. Apparently, the cost for climate-induced weather changes around the world are increasing, and losses basically rose 30% last year, and many insurance companies in many parts of the world, including the ones in California, are struggling in terms of insuring and reinsuring themselves in order to cover these costs. James, I'm thinking about one thing. I mean, there is a quite, I would call it schizophrenic movement, especially in the US. On the one hand, you have the fires, you have the losses, insurance losses, loss of life, property, memories, photographs, all the things that people are actually losing. And in the same time, you have American banks, the big ones, including BlackRock, leaving the Net Zero Alliance, abandoning their commitments to tackle the investments and lending activities from climate perspective. Why do you think this is the case? I mean, it's quite schizophrenic to understand how this can happen in the same country.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, who's occupying the White House is obviously very crucial. Despite an election might come down to a razor wire. I mean, it wasn't that close this time around, but everyone's aligning very quickly and very rapidly, even in these kind of instances with that. With the colour of the administration and the kind of pushback that Republicans have been making, and even legal challenges. I mean, in America, there's also legal challenges being made to these kind of financial institutions based on their desire to invest on ESG criteria. So I think they see that as a very real and concrete material risk for them to avoid, and that's the kind of choices that we've made. We've seen a very rapid alignment. I mean, also with what Facebook has been announcing in the last couple of weeks, or even the last week, I think, in terms of abandoning its fact-checking system and disbanding its D&I initiatives completely. And the way they've kind of justified that is kind of like, so well, finally, so we can take off the mask and go back to how we wanted to do business at the beginning. And there's been a very radical shift since the election on that.
I mean, it's fairly scary to actually understand, and I have many people listening to this. I mean, for years, neoliberal capitalist system has been criticized for its pros and cons, but now it seems that we are entering into a phase of neo-capitalism, which is a completely different ballgame, where autocrats, both the one in the private sector and the political sector, are getting much more space in the way how they can exercise the money and the power they have acquired and continuing to acquire across the world. The question is, what is really happening with the global institutions that are being set up to protect people around the world, both from undue influence from businesses, but also on a political stage. This is going to be interesting to follow, not only because the Trump has expressed the willingness to submit Greenland under his power, either through means of economics, buying it, or through the means of military power against a country that is currently accountable for Greenland and belongs to Greenland. It's the country of Denmark, and it's going to be interesting to follow up what is going on in that space. When we talk about fires in California, there has been a lot of things written about the fire departments, the reason why the emergency hasn't been able to tackle these fires in the speed and accuracy, with the speed and accuracy that many people would expect. But there are some other underlying things behind this, and they are related to things that have happened back in 1994. There has been articles published by this. There is a film that has been published on the situation, water, sort of a grabbing situation in California. As many people know, California is a desert landscape, and the water is a great asset. Now, many years ago, 1994, there was influence that has been done by a lot of influential families that own agricultural land in California, and they have managed to develop, together with politicians in California, what is called a Monterey Amendments. These are the series of changes to California's water regulation. The bigger change was who had the priority of water during the time of drought. Originally, urban areas were given priority since this is where people live. But after Monterey, agriculture companies got priority. Any reserves they had could then be sold back to government for a profit. So it's basically privatizing the asset, water asset in California. What happened is that they basically gained control of California's most valuable natural resources, and price basically got people who could barely afford it. Between 2000 and 2007, and I want people to listen to this, for example, the Beslik family, which is one of these most influential families, bought water for as little as 28 cents acre foot, which is how water is measured, and sold it for as much as 196 per acre foot to the state, basically pocketing more than 30 million in the process. This is happening in the US, one of the most progressive states in the US, and you can imagine how it looks in other parts of the world. Any sort of comments from your side? I'm thinking, James, that there is another sort of article that I will touch upon very briefly, which is the Nobel laureates around the world writing, 150 of them writing about the upcoming food crisis going forward. Are these sort of public assets like water is this something that we will see, in other parts of the world, that now due to the climate change, there will be a much more of the fight around resources like water?
Water and nature as well, I think, in terms of battle for resources, also minerals and not precious metals, but metals needed for the energy transition. These are going to be the new dimensions of power struggle and money struggle, and as I was listening to you and kind of reflecting on, when we work in sustainability with companies, so often you have these exercises that need to be done, and they often seem very sort of empty, sort of when you have to analyze the context and the scenario. And for years it's kind of not really changed, and so we've had the Paris Agreement, and we've got the Green Deal, and we've got sort of all these big sort of lateral processes and the SDGs, and these drive our corporate choices, and it's been this kind of language that so many people have used and sort of ceased to question, sort of taken almost for granted. And all of a sudden, as we look, this new year is a sort of new dawn in many ways. That as you look forward, you say, well, actually, our sustainability context is radically different. To a certain extent, it's a global phenomenon, but also, we've talked quite a bit already just today about the US. And I think there's also a fracturing in terms of what's your US context compared to the European context compared to the Asia context, and obviously that part of the world well as well. To a certain extent, perhaps before we in sustainability and ESG sort of thought there was this kind of global consensus about where the world's going and what our aims would be, and there's now this sort of very strong push in the other direction. We live in a very unequal age. And so people have lots of money, and then they can use it to their own needs. So it's not just governments and states that need to be seen as sort of driving what's happening, but also individuals. The collective net worth of the Trump administration is in the hundreds of billions. That's
also very interesting. I mean, people have been voting for a change in making America great again. I mean, the elites that are possessing the legislative power in the U.S. Compared to the Biden administration have a net worth that is mind-boggling. And, is that something that is corresponding to the expectations? I don't know. But it's also telling us something else, that institutions that we have been setting up to protect, joint collective prosperity of the nations around the world are getting dismantled. And this is a very dire position for the democracy in general, and it has I think also significant implication in how we manage emergencies. And emergencies are, of course, demanding the collective sort of action, and they are demanding also the way how you perceive the mitigation in the long term, preparedness for that, and all of that. And it goes back to the resources. So I also anticipate that we will see a more struggle for resources going forward. And there is one thing that I alluded to when I was talking about the Nobel laureates and World Food Prize laureates that have been writing a letter, submitting 150 of them, basically asking the world leaders and the big organizations around the world to prepare for a food crisis going forward. These people apparently know what they're talking about because many of them have been working in this space for a very long time. The world would need between 50 to 70% more food until 2050 to feed 9.7 billion people on this planet. Given the situation we are in with the droughts and fires and storms around the world, the big question is how prepared are we? And looking at what these laureates are actually saying, they are focusing on, they are sort of touching upon the climate change as being one issue, but in the same time, they are clearly indicating that the food and ability to feed the population, growing population around the world, will dominate debate going forward in much more thorough sort of a sense than climate is or has been dominating the discussion right now. Now, before we end this week, a couple of short updates on what is going on in terms of the investments. There is apparently a misconception out there that the ESG investments are on the sort of on a bad side, that there's a lot of outflows. That's correct in the US, and as I said before, ESG was never big there. Inflows in Europe are continuing to grow, and European Union is still standing as a beacon of light for sustainable investors around the world, which is very good. And it's also in Europe where you can see the real sort of a commitment and action from some investors and pension funds. One of the biggest, or actually the biggest pension fund in Denmark or in Holland, Netherlands, has recently sold off its stakes in Tesla due to the fact that they don't believe that the compensation package that Tesla CEO Elon Musk managed to sort of push through the AGM is not in line with the expectations on what responsible company is. Today, there is news out that Security Exchange Commission is also accusing Tesla CEO for financial fraud because of the way how he bought Twitter, now X, for $44 billion, and they estimate through taxes, through actually shares, and they estimate is that the Musk would have been needed to pay $170 billion for the worth of the company. Thank you very much. Next week we will try to address some of the upcoming trends. Of course, it's always interesting to watch what is going on around the world, different parts. We will touch upon US, Europe, Asia. I'll also bring some more sort of a thorough update on what is going on in the space of nuclear development, nuclear energy, and what does that mean for renewable energy going forward. Thank you very much for listening to me and James. We wish you a great weekend, and we'll reconnect next week. All the best.
Goodbye from me. Thanks.